Welcome, modern day mystics, fellow truth seekers, James and Justin, back again with another reaction video. And in this one, we are going to be taking a look at the Hindu Saga and their video titled Alakshmi, the jealous sister of the goddess Lakshmi.
That's Alakshmi, okay?
Yes.
Don't confuse Lakshmi with Alakshmi. It's Lakshmi, not Alakshmi.
Yes. Let's get into it.
It is Alakshmi.
While everyone knows of Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth and fortune, very few people have heard of Alakshmi. Alakshmi is not mentioned in any of the Vedas, Upanishads, or the early Puranic literatures. But all aspects of Alakshmi match those of the Rig-Vedic goddess Niriti. She is often referred to as the shadow of Lakshmi. She is also considered to be the elder sister of Lakshmi and represents everything that is opposite of Lakshmi, and hence is associated with poverty and misfortune. In Padma Puran, the cosmology includes her where the Samudra Manthan creates both good and bad of everything that emerges. That which is inauspicious and bad emerges first. More effort creates the auspicious and good according to the Padma Puran. First, Alakshmi emerges. Then, Lakshmi appears during the Samudra Manthan. Gods send Alakshmi to go dwell amongst harmful people, give them poverty and grief. She, as the goddess of inauspiciousness and grief, is the opposite of Lakshmi, who is the goddess of auspiciousness and joy. Alakshmi is sometimes referred to as Jyeshtha. Alakshmi is also known as Kalahapriya and Daridra, and the shadow opposite of Lakshmi. It was said that when she entered a household, Alakshmi brought jealousy and malice in her trail. Brothers fell out with each other. Families and their male lineage faced ruin and destruction. In Kartika Mahatmya, Mahadev Das retells the story of Alakshmi in Padma Puran.
So it just dawned on me something sort of spooky about this video. Because this is maybe the third time we've tried doing this. You know, just to keep it real that we are real humans, we got into it. We had just a whole slew of disagreements, and funny enough, it was after this, this evil twin of Lakshmi type video. And it got me to thinking that in the end it was sort of constructive, because we talked about a lot of stuff afterwards. Yeah. But the force of something like Lakshmi, which is the bringer of jealousy and all... Alakshmi, sorry. Yeah. Correct, is the bringer of all this bad stuff. But nevertheless, and I was even thinking about it today, about the idea that, like, for most people, because right in the title there it says that she's the jealous sister of Lakshmi. Yeah. Alakshmi is. And I was thinking about jealousy, and I was thinking jealousy is natural. I mean, you see it happen in the ape kingdom. There's a lot of coups, and the alpha male's got to protect his position, and jealousy arises. And among humans, it certainly is natural and normal. And a lot of things can happen out of something like jealousy. One day somebody might go, if it wasn't for the fact that I was so jealous, I wouldn't have started my business. I wouldn't have got my life together because I felt, by contrast, so much crappier than the people around me. So a lot of stuff can come from jealousy. But I was also thinking that, sometimes I think with all these scriptures that we go over, that sometimes you should, when it's appropriate, reach beyond them. Reach to something even higher, because I was thinking that to be not ever jealous is something quite alien. People can understand feelings like envy, and people can understand, the struggle to compete in this world, but it's of a higher value. I think it's just worth recognizing sort of reverently the higher values that are godlike, where it's not that you suppress your jealousy, it's not that you tamp out or through discipline force those things down. That's what you do when you're feeling jealous. You suppress it and you try to alchemize something new out of it. But even above that would be to no longer feel those things. I think you've tapped into a greater understanding when you go beyond it. I can't remember what the rest of this is about, but that just came to mind.
Yeah.
Because I'd been sort of thinking about it today.
Well,
and also that word, auspiciousness. Do you know what that means?
No, not really. I'd have to look it up, I think.
I think auspiciousness is like good signs, like good signs that things are to come or something like that.
The only Puran that tells a Lakshmi story to some length. It narrates the story of both sister goddesses visiting the house of a devotee who, through great tapasya, had awakened their interest. Upon inviting them to his home, he then asked them, "What may I offer you?" In the Indian culture, when receiving a guest into one's home, the unquestioned custom is to offer them a wish. Whatever is asked is given as duty, without resentment from the giver or shame on the part of the asker. Lakshmi came wearing red and gold, the colors of the bride in Hindu culture. Her full hair was beautifully and modestly braided, and she scented the atmosphere with roses and jasmine. She moved with such sweet elegance as if she floated on the ether. The devotee noticed that her presence brought space to his breath and heart, a feeling of well-being, generosity, and contentment entering his spirit as he watched her. Lakshmi's wish was for a single dish of sweets and creamy delicacies. The devotee had these ordered and she ate them gracefully. Alakshmi entered wearing a single white cloth, the colors of a Hindu widow. Her hair was sparse and unkempt, matted and unwashed. She moved awkwardly and painfully with a hunchback, stinking of bile and excrement. The devotee watched her and noticed how she aroused craving. Anger and violence struck his mind like lightning. Shortness of breath and a vice-like grip on his heart was felt. Alakshmi's wish was for copious dishes of lemons and chilies that had started to rot and decay. The devotee had these ordered and watched how she went at devouring them in a seemingly breathless panic. As the two sisters enjoyed their meal in the home of their devotee, he noticed that a profound focus and sobriety existed in him. He had an equal understanding of fortune and loss at the same time, which filled his head with compassion and balance. Lakshmi stood up and said, "May I wash my hands outside? I will return in a moment." The devotee directed her, and she left him alone with her older sister for a while. In the presence of Alakshmi, the devotee became depressed, concerned only with the morbidity in his heart and the world around him. He went very deep into his meditation, but the pain took away his clarity. When Lakshmi returned, a balance once again came over him, as if waking from a dream, and he saw that life is not only bad. Then Alakshmi stood up and said, "I wish to go outside, but I don't need any water as I never wash." The devotee directed her outside. When he was left alone in the presence of Lakshmi, he noticed that he was filled with ego and well-being. Kingly and proud, compassion left his heart as he indulged in his own grandeur. As Alakshmi returned, the devotee felt that he had awoken from a self-satisfied trance and could not imagine what arrogance had possessed him. As the conversation...
It's such a good story. When the video started, it talked a lot about how Alakshmi is not known by a lot of people, and that this kind of came later. It wasn't in the original scriptures, and it makes me think about the evolution of the understanding of some of these Hindu philosophies and how maybe it's evolved over time, and a greater understanding on top of a greater understanding. But it said that he was, what was it? It said that he was filled with balance and compassion.
When she was there.
When they were both in when they were both in the room.
Yeah.
Balance and compassion. And that says something about knowing, in my opinion, knowing a little bit something about the dark side.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I think what can actually possibly happen is on the spiritual walk, you're going to go through all kinds of different stages and steps. And I think that sometimes you go through a step where you do maybe what Carl Jung called shadow work or something, and you're pretty balanced when you start noticing all the aspects of the dark side. But I actually think that you can learn a bunch about those things and maybe move to sort of almost an elevated state, sort of like what afterwards when it says he was filled with ego and arrogance and everything like that. And I don't always think that means that you're straight up arrogant, like stupid and blind and prideful. I think that you can be basking in a spiritually probably beautiful place, but are you in touch with compassion and everything like that? You know, think of some of the greatest masters, some of the names that stand out forever, and are they usually, I think the ones that are most admirable have a capacity to help those in need and have a heart for those that are suffering and are aware of what would help them and aware of what would hinder them and operate from a place like that.
Yeah. Well, it said that he was in a trance state when it was just Lakshmi there.
Yeah.
He was in a trance.
Yeah.
So maybe you lose some self-awareness and it allows for calamity maybe to come upon you because you're not balanced. You kind of don't have...
Sure.
You're not in a right headspace. You're just like caught up in how awesome everything is.
The thing is, I don't want it to be that calamity comes upon them because I know that everyone is susceptible to this. Yeah. Who wants to ground things when they're having a good time? In fact, sometimes you'll be grounded following a very prideful moment in your life. You'll be like, I guess I don't even get to enjoy things. You know, I'm just trying to like sit back and enjoy the fruits of my labor or something, but something's got to come along to ground me. So imagine you had enough consciousness to just not let yourself get puffed to some ridiculous degree. But somehow I say all that while maintaining, I don't think that means that should means that you shouldn't still be able to have some kind of sustainable peace. Yeah. That you could be peaceful, but just so aware that you haven't forgotten about the bad things or something. Yeah. I don't know. I guess I don't know.
This story is, I don't know, for some reason I'm thinking of like guru neutralness. People talking about how like it's a neutral state. You know, it's not too high, it's not too low.
Well, you know what the crazy thing is about these gurus is you don't know their inner world. Yeah. Sometimes appearances can be deceiving because with a lot of gurus, if they're good enough, if they're skilled enough, they've got devotees. And the devotees love them so much to try to shower them with things. And you can think, must be nice. And I could be that holy if I had a bunch of people doing that. But you actually don't know that on their inside, you know, and I think about recently just a clip I saw of Sadhguru where he was talking to a guy and was like, Sadhguru, do you ever get angry? And he was like, do you ever get sad? And he was like, I could cry right now. I could think about, you know, something as simple as like an ant or something like that, stepping on an ant. I forget what he said. Yeah. And the guy was like, I can see you're welling up with tears right now. You could cry right now. And he's like, yeah, I could. Like, it's never far from you to be tender. It's never far from you to be sensitive. You know, and if you're a master, maybe even when you do come off as arrogant, it's to prove some greater point. Because I could see somebody coming along. Say a moralist came in and was like, arrogance is the worst thing in the world. You should never be arrogant. Pride is the blah. Just some moralist judging or something. I could see a master being like, look at me. Look at how puffed up I am. Is this really going to hurt you? Yeah. How arrogant I am? You know, this just always just infinite lessons to balance you right back out, you know? So if anything, maybe this story is just a big lesson on balance. Staying balanced and not losing track of that. Yeah. Not being too anything.
Between the goddesses and the man continued. The elder sister demanded to know from the devotee which one of them was more beautiful. The poor devotee struggled to find an answer that would not cause offense to both of them. He said, "You both are profoundly beautiful and ugly at the same time, according to where you stand." Alakshmi leaned forward and asked, "What do you mean?" He answered, "Lakshmi, for example, was hideously ugly when she stood outside my home, but when she entered within, she became beautiful." He continued, choosing his words very wisely. Alakshmi was unbelievably beautiful when she stood outside my home, but not so pleasing when she entered within. When both of you come together, my heart feels in balance. Lakshmi said, "Dear devotee, sometimes I will come alone, but if you wish to enjoy my beauty a little more, then place roses and jasmine flowers and sweets on your altar." Alakshmi said, "And sometimes I will also visit you alone, but if you wish to enjoy my beauty a little longer, then leave rotting lemons and chilies outside your door." There is also a story of Alakshmi's marriage that educates people on where Alakshmi likes to dwell. As per this story, Lakshmi, living in the supreme abode of Lord Vishnu, the Vaikunt, was worried about her sister. She shared with Lord Vishnu the cause of her distress, that nobody was willing to take her sister for a wife. Vishnu knew that he himself would have to find a husband for his sister-in-law. The supreme god went directly to sage Udalaka and asked him whether he would like to be related to him by marrying his sister-in-law. He said that he would be very pleased to have him, the virtuous sage, as his brother-in-law. The sage readily gave his consent. It was a proposal too attractive to even think of turning down. As for his sister-in-law, Vishnu said that she was Sarvatahu Shrestha, meaning that in his view, Alakshmi was worthiest of all. We do not know whether the good sage was disappointed when he saw his bride at the time of the wedding, which was attended by gods and sages. If he was, he overcame it and accepted her as she was. He knew that this was the protector, Lord Vishnu's will. The wedding was over. The sage took his wife to his ashram, but she found the place utterly unsuitable for her. The chanting of the sacred hymns pained her. The atmosphere of peace, serenity, and spirituality in the ashram suffocated her. Alakshmi ran out of the house right onto the street. The sage was distressed to see this. He found her conduct not only disgraceful, but also completely incomprehensible.
I was just thinking about the part when it's like, if you want Lakshmi to show up, you leave whatever it was, roses or something, like nice things.
Stuff, yeah.
And then if you want Alakshmi to dwell longer, you leave those rotting lemons and rotting chilies.
Yeah.
Now, real question: how often are you leaving rotting lemons and rotting chilies? Like, I'm just thinking of the propensity for us to favor good things.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, deny that in any normal day, it's like you might wake up and it might be blistering hot, or you might wake up and it might be freezing cold, or you might wake up and it's raining, or you might wake up and it's the sun's baking your skin.
Yeah.
And the yo-yoing push and pull of polarizing things in life and our propensity to pick things we think are better. But at the same time, if I were to say, so it's really the same thing to either watch a Saw or Hostel horror movie marathon is the same thing as watching a marathon of Osho, or the same thing as watching a marathon of something peaceful. Your brain can't square that those are, if the fact is that those are equal parts. You're pulled by your propensity to prefer things.
So are you talking about like what are you attracting?
Well,
like,
no, I'm saying that, so let's say on your you might go around bragging on your spiritual walk if you were like, I don't know, I've been just really peaceful lately, everything's been clear. You wouldn't go around and be like, oh, I've had mysterious injuries, my head hurts all the time, I can't think straight and I'm depressed. Isn't that great?
Yeah.
Isn't it great how terrible? But the fact is, both things might yield greater knowledge.
Yes,
even being desolate might yield some.
Well, that's
greater
and
knowledge.
isn't that the perception thing? Because the devotee said that when Alakshmi was on the outside of the house, it was a beautiful thing.
Right.
Right, and he could still see it was in perception, right? But when she was in the house, it was a terrible thing. So a lot of it has to do with perception.
For sure.
Yeah.
Valid. Exactly true. But at the same thing, that word auspiciousness, I do think sometimes the universe signals to you that you're moving in the right direction with some good things. You know, like you'd be like, you know, I think it can signal balance, maybe even that you're balanced in things that you start going with the flow of the universe and productive things start to happen. I mean, you know, maybe mouths start to be fed and people start to go from desolation to a better place. That seems to signal something good.
Yeah.
But I suppose I don't have the answer here. Maybe in the comments, somebody could steer me a little bit better, because I'm still thinking, you know, because who's going to invite calamity? Who's going to be like, I really don't care if calamity comes upon me or blessings.
Yeah.
If you're honest about it, you're going to be like, I like being blessed. I don't like being calamitous.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's not hard to see that some of the hardest times in your life yield some great fruit.
Exactly. Definitely. For
But
sure.
then you don't be attached to that fruit, I guess. Don't be attached to the blessed time, and don't sweat the bad time, maybe.
Yeah. Well, maybe in the remembering what you gained from maybe your last bad event and what it yielded, you know, could be a good way to help you get through some of those harder times when they do come.
And not get swept away and, you know, wind your ego around any particular thing, right?
Yeah.
Because say you're in a good time, you could take your ego, wrap it around that, and identify with that good time and be like, I am a king. I am all these good things. And your ego is now grasping onto that. Or bad things could happen and you could go, everything's bad. There's no redeemable thing in reality. It's all bad. And your ego is wrapped around it. So whatever state you're in, just don't let it pull your ego along with it.
He asked her why she ran out of the home, why was she crying, and what had she found so terribly wrong with his ashram. Then she told him what he never knew. She said that she could not live in a swastik environment and could only live in a tamasic one. She could live where people are violent, hate one another, are jealous of one another, quarrel amongst themselves, praise themselves, and engage in malicious talk about one another, steal, practice no sexual discipline, and where there is smell of cooked meat. In a sense, she could not live where there is cleanliness, calm, contentment, understanding, and where the sacred fire is lit and sacred mantras are chanted. The sage was aghast. He realized that he simply could not live with this woman. The virtuous sage did not hate her, nor did he feel cheated by Lord Vishnu. He had no complaints against anyone, but at the same time, he realized that there was no possibility at all that this marriage with Alakshmi would work. So one day, without telling her his mind, he took her to the woods, and there he told her that he was going to bring her food. He never returned. After 3 days of waiting, the reality of her situation dawned on her, and the helpless abandoned wife started crying. Alakshmi's cry reached her sister's ear in Vaikuntha, and she was sad and worried. She pleaded her husband to do something for her sister, who, she told him, had been forsaken by her husband and was all alone in the deep forest. Vishnu went to Alakshmi at once. He told her to come to Vaikuntha with him, a swastik abode, where lived those who had lived virtuous lives and had received his grace. Her sister was in charge there, and she would enjoy all comfort there. Alakshmi declined. She told him that her nature was such that purity and virtue suffocated her. Vaikuntha would make her utterly miserable. Vishnu, the ultimate provider, found such a place for her. He asked her to live in those houses where people quarrel, in those persons who are cheats and liars, who bring suffering to others and relish the sight of others in pain, who have no respect for others' women and who are addicted to the game of dice and are unclean in every aspect.
You know, it's one of those things whenever, like, whether it's in the Bible or whatever, where they're listing the behaviors of the evildoers.
Yeah.
You know, and then there's a part of you that's like, well, whew, I don't have that one. Oh, I have that one. I don't have that one. Oh, I have that, maybe that one. You ever notice that?
Oh, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's just amazing because they cover such a plethora of possible character defects that you might have. And then, the other thing I just wanted to quickly say is that I noticed that one of the things about this story between Alakshmi and Lakshmi is that I think there's a lot of use to label, like figuring out what are the characteristics of something that's an opposite of another, right? Like, say you like Lakshmi, you like wealth and good fortune and everything like that. And then you want to know just what are the characteristics opposite that, almost like what are the characteristics of good and what are the characteristics of evil.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's good to see them differentiated, even though in this non-dual work, that maybe part of the idea is to, unify all that in the end.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, for the purposes of navigating where you go, I mean, say you were on a journey and somebody wrote you up a map and be like, don't go through the forest of despair. It's full of despair. You know what I mean? You'd be like, okay, good.
There were so many, like, within the stories that were told here, it was rich with, like, meanings and themes. And one theme that I'll just bring up before we wrap this up is one about the sage. You're focused on Lakshmi and Alakshmi, but the sage made the deal with Vishnu. He was like, sure, I'll do it. Because it was like his in, and look what happened because, he wasn't thinking clearly. And then he goes and he leaves her out there in the forest,
You're right. That's the one thing I gotta say about all the Hindu stuff is it's like a Where's Waldo of meaning.
Yeah, I know.
Every image and everything is just rich.
Yeah. So, guys, hopefully you liked our reaction on this video. If you did, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, share this with a friend, and everyone, until next time,
Stay spiritual.